Big news today, folks. Big news. Joe freaking Biden has dropped out of the race. He is no longer the Democratic presidential candidate, and he has endorsed Kamala Harris. Now, I myself, I'm not a big Kamala fan. I am not. I am not a coconut head, but I will be celebrating like one. We have, just some coconut water of not any specific brand, just in case. But but we will be celebrating the way that the coconut heads do with some coconut water. It's coconut time. We'll see, at least, because it doesn't look too favorable that the Democratic Party is going to get behind Kamala anyways. But let's just get right into it. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a look at the official little letter here that we have from Joe Biden that he released on Twitter. So here we have it. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We protected and preserved our democracy, and we revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Let's go, folks. Let's go. I was jumping with joy when I saw this. I was like, yes, finally, he had some common sense. And by the way, this comes after not only everyone really pressuring him to drop out outside of like his family, but this also comes after he said that the only way he would really step down is if there was major health concern with him. And on the same day he said that, he got COVID. He tested positive for COVID. And which is really funny because before then, he was saying, oh, the only person who's going to get me to drop out is God. Basically, like the Lord Almighty is going to have to come down and get me out of this race. Looks like the Lord sent him a message. He did. This is probably the one moment in my life where I'm just like, you know what? Maybe there is a God. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. And for a lot of people, this was surprising. Some people thought that he wasn't going to really give any decision on whether or not he was going to drop out until after Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States, and I believe is going to speak in front of Congress on Wednesday. I think some people were believing that he was going to save, his decision until afterwards, basically to kind of just save face, not look weak in a way, because by stepping down of a race, it does kind of, it will probably give the wrong impression to someone like Netanyahu, who is very much kind of a strong man in a sense. But we'll see. We do see at the end of this that he does kind of endorse Kamala Harris, but this is kind of separate from what his official endorsement. But for this little section right here, for now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me re-elected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work, and let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. So that's kind of raising her up, but at the same time, she was his vice president, so obviously he's gonna mention her in some way. But that's obviously not an endorsement to be the next candidate. I will believe today what I always have, that there is nothing America can't do, and when we do it together, we just have to remember we are the United States of America. Oh, this is just so good. And then, so this was dropped 1:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so almost around 2. And then just a little bit afterwards, so probably I would say 15, like a half an hour later, he drops this tweet. My fellow Democrats, I have decided not to accept the nomination and to focus all my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris for my vice president, and it's been the best decision I made. Today I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this. And this is probably... Also, I do think it's funny that the people who are getting like the most upset about this are people like Libs of TikTok and Wokeness. The fact that those people are getting upset about this should say so fucking much. It should say so fucking much that they're getting upset about this, because the only people who actually wanted Joe Biden to stay on the ballot, to stay in the race, were Republicans or just big Democratic dick riders who just could not read the room when it came to what the Democratic Party at large wanted in terms of like the officials who, actually move with the party or big figureheads in the party. Because it has not been a secret that much that behind the scenes, Nancy Pelosi and other big figures of the Democratic Party were trying to convince Joe Biden to drop out. But people like this woman right here, and we have this little TikTok from her this was like after the debate, because this was when people were really pushing for Joe Biden to get out. But we have this little TikTok, this little video she made, and it doesn't really look that great in retrospect, does it?
Joe Biden should have his LBJ moment and drop out of the presidential election. It's something that people who have absolutely no clue about the history of this country say when talking about this election this year. In 1968, when Lyndon B. Johnson dropped out of the presidential election, he did it in March. We are in July. And in 1968, the Republican...
Yeah, we are in July and he dropped out.
1968, the Republican presidential candidate, Richard Nixon, went on to absolutely dog walk the Democratic candidate after we had an open Democratic convention. I think I've seen this film before, and I didn't like the ending. Biden is our nominee, period. And the LBJ moment that he should be having here is he should learn that you don't run away from the fight, you run towards it. The entirety of Joe...
First of all, Nixon wasn't as unpopular as Trump, so the whole thing with that is like, it's not even this similar case. Comparing that to like what happened with the Nixon race, that with what's going on now, is asinine because it's very different. Trump was president before and has decreased in popularity over time, even to the point where before he got, there was an attempt of before the assassination attempt on him, he was kind of losing faith within the right. After that, he did boost in popularity and still is seeing that popularity. I feel like that was a big unifying factor for the right. But I don't think it's going to be a big change. I feel like over the course of the last, mostly due to the fact that nobody's been really able to find anything on the shooter that they can really pin on the left. Like, nothing has been found. And I feel like that really hurts their, unifying factor a bit, because they can't just look to the left as the cause of it. But at the same time, this race, even before then, should have been incredibly easy. But it wasn't, because people could just look at Biden and be like, yeah, he's unfit. There was I wouldn't say small contingent. I think there was a fair contingent of people on the left who saw that. But after the debate, a lot of people saw that. And that's what, kind of drove this whole campaign to push him out in big numbers. But to say that's anything like what happened back in the day when Nixon won, it's just completely asinine.
Entirety of Joe Biden's presidency has been built on promises made, promises kept.
Which is a lie, because a lot of the stuff that he was promising for his second term was stuff that he promised in his first term, but just never got done because. Even though, despite the fact that in the first half of his first term, Democrats controlled both houses, so they really could have just done whatever they wanted, but he did nothing.
Almost every single one of the major legislative agenda items that he put forward, he has fulfilled. So when Joe Biden comes to the American people and says, I can do this, I can beat Donald Trump, I believe him. You know why? Because he did it before. And if you are an elected official an elected official, especially, I don't know, a 77-year-old U.S. congressman who has been in office since 1995, and you have the
How long has Biden been in office or been in politics as a whole? Like, going after someone who's actually younger than Biden is and has been in, politics less than Biden has is not exactly the, the own you think it is, because she basically says, oh, it's pot kettle, like you need to shut your trap. This is very embarrassing, especially because we now know that she has completely changed her tone. So much to the fact that, like, she did this. I'm 20 years. This was a tweet she actually sent out. I'm 21 years old and will proudly be casting my first ever presidential vote for Joe Biden. Cross that out for Kamala Harris. Not a great look, just big switch up. Because here's the thing, when she made that video, people were saying Kamala Harris should be the one to basically take the nomination afterwards. So when she made that video back then, even though Kamala Harris being the next up was already in talks, it's very funny now that you consider that she switched up. So, like, big time. Same with this guy, Harry Sisson, who I covered during the whole Piers Morgan debate that had Hassan Piker. He very much switched up from this. That was talking about, like, the Biden debate, whatever. He very much switched up and now is, advocating for Kamala Harris. But essentially, oh my god. Oh my god. Of course. Of fucking course. In this video, she also mentioned that, back during, the election that she was talking about with Nixon, that LBJ dropped out of, there was an open Democratic convention, which we are more than likely going to see again this year, because apparently top members of the Democratic Party are not exactly behind Kamala Harris as the next nominee for the Democratic Party. And instead, they are kind of looking towards the open convention route. Apparently, Gavin Newsom has been talked about in terms of someone who could be the nominee, despite the fact that he has openly said that he is not interested in running for president. Gretchen Whitmer has also been brought up, but I don't think an open convention is really the right route. I'm not completely against it, but during this time, now, like I said before, I don't really think, because of the lack of information, or like the lack of information the right has in terms of the shooter, they can't exactly go to the left, and I feel like their party is still not as unified as it was. Like, it's not as unified as you might think after their leader basically got shot at. But at the same time, Trump definitely saw a boost after that assassination attempt in the polls. Even despite the fact that they really don't have a unifying factor, it's not like they can make the shooter someone who represents the left with the information that they've been able to get from him. Like, there's nothing to really say that he is a liberal, leftist, anything outside of, like, the whole donation thing that really doesn't prove anything, because it more than likely it was just like a very scammy thing. It still is a cause for concern when there definitely feels like there is going to be kind of this unifying factor on the right, especially with someone who might be more moderating in terms of his VP pick with JD Vance. But again, I don't think that's going to be like a huge factor, but when you already have a very close race, despite the fact that it really shouldn't, between Biden and Trump, you really just need to go with a better choice. And I do think Kamala would be a better choice in that regard, because she does have a lot of hangups. She has very similar hangups to Biden when it comes to his policies and shit like that, just without, the old man factor of it. But at the same time, there is the factor that I don't know. I don't really think there is that many negatives with her replacing Biden when you compare the two, because while their policies are still not great when you compare them, she is definitely better in a lot of cases. And public reception wise, she probably would be a better fit. And I feel like the reason why there shouldn't be an open Democratic convention is because it takes a lot of the focus out of going after Trump and going after the right, because that should be a bigger focus. I'm not against an open convention, but I think right now might not be the most appropriate time, in all honesty. I'm still open to an open convention. I just don't think this is the right time when the focus should be going after Trump. And I think Harris, while having hangups in terms of public reception, while she's not very charismatic at all, she is a better fit right now. And I think, focusing too much of, just doing this open convention with who's going to be the nominee is just not the right move at this point in time. Like, going after Trump, really putting the pressure on him before he can really, garner a lot of traction when he hasn't even, when the party is basically just kind of, I don't know, like the Republicans just are not that strong of a force. I feel like, as they have been the last two election cycles of 2016 and 2020, it doesn't feel that big. So I feel like the right move right now is to be a unifying force, get behind one person, and just go after them. Because when you have that open convention, it doesn't show you being this connected, unifying force. It feels very disorganized. And when not a lot of people really have that much faith in the Republican Party, you need to look competent compared to them, because they really don't. If you saw the RNC, they look like a joke. They look like a bunch of nuts. So compared to them, you need to look like you have your shit together. And by having an open convention, it doesn't really send the message that you do. And again, the big name that they seemingly want to push out there in terms of this open convention doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't. So who are you going to get to replace them? I think maybe just going with Kamala is the right choice for now. Again, she is a lot better in terms of public reception because she's not an old man who's going to flub on her words every single day. And she is better on some issues. She has been, well, at least not publicly outspoken, but she has been known to be more left on the topic of, what's going on with Israel-Palestine, and has seemingly been more open to a ceasefire than Biden has. So on that front, it could be better. I don't think she's going to do great. There's going to be a lot of hangups. Personally, even if she is the nominee, I'm not going to vote for her. But there's just no right choice right now. Kamala Harris might be the best option right now, and that's unfortunate. Again, I would like some more names to be out there. I think there are better picks, like Gretchen Whitmer, and I don't know. I'm not a Newsom fan, so I can't really say that I would be confident in him either. I really can't. J.D. Pritzker might be a good name as well to throw in there, but outside of that, it's just kind of like, do you either go with someone who is definitely better publicly, like would definitely be able to go out there and perform at a better job than Joe Biden in terms of public reception, and get behind them, or just have this open convent, even though their policies aren't great. I don't know. It's just a wild time. I am very glad that Biden dropped out. I feel like now we are definitely in a place where, regardless where they go, the Democrats have a better chance of winning the race. But at the same time, I feel like this isn't the time to look disorganized. When your Democratic nominee drops out, when we are, almost 4 months away from, 4 months away from elections, to have this kind of open convention right now after he's already dropped out pretty late into it, it doesn't look great. I'm not opposed to it. If it does have, again, I think there are better choices than Kamala Harris. If they are able to win at the end of the convention and are able to become the nominee, then I think, I would definitely be behind it. But I think right now with, Biden dropping out, it doesn't make the Democratic Party look like this unified party that can get behind one person. It looks like a mess. And I think they just don't really have the time or public reception to look like a mess right now. But yeah, that's all I really had to talk about on this subject.